Hello everybody, got another update on this amp here. I think I finally actually found the perfect setup for this amp here. So what I went ahead and did was, for the longest time now, I've thought that the reason as to the giant tone change in this amp when putting parallel tubes or higher wattage tube was because of the difference between the primary impedances on the output transformer not being correct for the tubes. Turns out it's because I'd set the master volume so low with the newer tubes, it was creating this high pass, low pass, high pass, I can't remember. It was cutting off a lot of treble. So I added a treble peaking circuit over the master. So it was a 470K with a 500 picofarad cap in parallel with that over the first lug and the second lug of the master volume. And now with the other tubes in it, it sounds amazing at low volume again. I'm not losing the high end like I was before, where I almost thought there was something wrong with my power tube wiring, but it turns out it was just something as simple as that. So with that out of the way, the only other modifications I've done with this now is, when using the clean side, the bias for the first stage now is 2.7K with the 10 microfarad. Oop, and there we go. Just changing out a couple of tubes. We got a tungsten in V1. We got a mullet in tungsten V2, mullet in V1. Then we got a Solvetech 7025 and V3. Currently, there's a JJ 6V6S in the power tube slot, and what this video is going to be doing today is I'm going to be going over how it sounds with different power tubes, starting with the 6V6. Actually, I did do one other thing. So for the negative feedback, it is now 27K, 46K, and 80K about for the negative feedback. So it made it a little bit more usable for this amp. Also, the V1B stage, so would be the first stage of the clean channel. I now have the plate resistor at 120K instead of 100, just to get a little bit more gain when we're in the clean side, to make up for the lack of power amp distortion that this amp generates, because it's single-ended, sounds a little bit different. So we're going to start off in the clean side. Nothing up front of the amp. We just have it, have the volume down real low. Start off with the gain pretty low. So, you know what? I'll turn up the volume a little bit more. I'm going to keep the volume at the same level for all the tube changes, so you can hear the volume difference too. Really nice clean out of this amp, especially at lower volumes now. I don't have to crank the master up all the way and turn down the preamp. You can get a good balance. So let's go to a dirty now. What we're going to do for each tube is master volume, same spot. I will tweak the gain control, though. Right now it's at the middle position. Now it's at the top. I'm going to switch to the bridge pickup. Okay, I'm going to shut it off right now. What we're going to do next is we're going to put another 6v6 in parallel. This is a vintage 6v6. And in parallel, this runs at a much lower bias, so a little bit cleaner. Turn this back. I'm not really practicing the best amp practices here with the tubes, but these aren't really, expensive tubes or anything, so I don't mind doing this. I wouldn't recommend doing the same. I'm not really waiting for them to cool down or anything. I'm just going to be pulling them out in this and probably burning myself. Let's go. I'm going to crank this gain back down to half, back to neck position, and let's hear how it sounds now. Oop, would be good if I took it off standby. Oop. Oh, volume was down all the way. Haha, never mind. What I always notice immediately when putting the two 6v6 in parallel is it sounds a lot more fuller. There's more mid. It feels like there's more mid bite to it. A little bit more bass drive. Let's crank up the gain. Also, there was a noticeable volume increase with the two parallel tubes, and probably gonna be a lot more noticeable now with the gain cranked up. So. So that's actually one of my favorite sounds with this amp, the two 6v6s in parallel. It just gives it this nice, big, warm, meaty sound. Now, if you can't, I don't know if you can really tell the difference over on the camera, but with the two 6v6s in parallel, the tone I was going for becomes a lot more AC/DC than just one 6v6. It's almost as if the one 6v6 is just missing a little something, and the two in parallel add a little bit more to it. So now we're going to go with an el34. Just a Ruby el34, not the greatest el34 in the world, but it does its job. I have the first. Whoop, that guy's really hot. Yeah, this vintage 6v6 gets wicked hot. That's why it never goes in the front position, biased hotter. I feel like it'll explode on me. Probably should get a new one. But el34 is going in the first slot, which has the cathode and pin 1 tied together, so you can use el34s in it. I'm going to start off with a clean sound again with a neck pickup and see how that sounds. Just let it warm up a little bit. Ooh, got a blister on my thumb. Okay, got the heaters glowing in there. And let's listen to the cleans. I really have to fix the loose socket. Every video I make, that socket's a problem. know if you guys have noticed in the video, but there's a little bit more like upper mid-range growl. It seems like there's actually more distortion using the el34, which you'd expect less just because it's a higher wattage tube. But I mean, maybe that's just more characteristic of the el34 versus the 6v6. But it seems like there's a little bit more distortion at the same gain setting. So let's crank it up all the way to treble pickup now. Listen to how that sounds. This is a really good sound too. It's about the same volume, I'd say, as the two 6v6s. Maybe it's a little bit quieter. It's really hard to tell with this speaker since it's so efficient. Once I get a greenback in there, it might be a little bit easier to tell. But there's definitely more mid-range focus using the el34 versus the two 6v6s. And it's a good sound on its own too. I'm still partial to the two 6v6s because I think there's something, you know, a little bit more magical about using two different tubes in the same amp to generate some like cool little overtones and stuff. So next, let's move on to the Softech 5881. Just because this is a really cool tube too, and I really like this when I'm doing the cleaner tones. Typically use this one in the same slot as the el34. Amp's about to fall over. Whew. Not as hot as that 6v6, but boy, these still get pretty hot. This one I might have to wait a little bit to get out, but whew, come on. God, I'm going to burn all my fingers at this rate. Ah, there we go. Whoo, boy. Okay, 5881 in there. Let's power her up too. 5881's a pretty cool tubes. You know, pretty much 6L6 GC, just lower wattage, so you get a little bit more grit out of them. I don't have any 6L6s, I think, at the moment. Well, I might somewhere, but I don't really play 6L6 amps that much. So having something with this style tube in it, or having at least the ability to use something with this style tube in it, is actually pretty cool. It's a different sound I'm not super used to. Let's turn this guy back on up. Neck pickup again for the clean tones. Probably like I said, my favorite tube for the clean sounds. It kind of gives it more of like a hi-fi quality, even though it probably shouldn't be due to the fact that it's a lower wattage tube, relatively speaking. Trebles kind of sparkle a little bit more. There's a little bit more bass end. It's definitely kind of has more scooped quality to it. Let's go ahead and crank the gain. Back to treble pickup. Listen to this again. And then, you know, just to play around for the last one, what we're going to do is something that's, I wouldn't really say dangerous, but not super healthy for the power trainee, which actually is pretty cold right now, so I'm probably going to get away with this. But we're going to put the JJ6V6 in the rear slot over here with the 5881 still in there. Give it some sun, turn on again. Start with the clean sound. Again, I really like this sound too. This is another favorite sound of mine. I feel like you get more wattage out of this and a little bit more, you know, clean. A little bit more headroom for that matter, and a little bit more of a bass response. Just probably not too good to run this amp in this setup that often, just because I don't think the power trainee technically can handle it. But let's give the clean a listen. Tend to have the most fun with that setting on this, you know, really, really nice, clean sound. And let's go through the overdriven sound one more time. Again, definitely a cool sound on its own. However, I think for the distorted tone, it doesn't sound as nice as the two 6v6s or just the 5881 on its own. Pretty sure this is due to the impedance mismatching on the output tranny, though, because this is the 5K primary, which is good for a 6v6 or a single 6LG6. But not so much for parallel 6v6s or definitely not a 5881 and a 6v6 in parallel. I think that would drop it down below 2K for what it wants to see. Even the two 6v6s, I believe, would still drop it to like 2.5K or something like that. I'm not 100% certain on the theory behind those. But you know what? It's, again, sounds really good for the cleans. I just don't really like how it sounds distorted nearly as much as the other setups I've described. I find myself usually playing with the two 6v6s as I found it. It's a good compromise between the tone I want and keeping the amp stable, being that the 6v6s only, I believe they draw, 0.5 amps from the heater, or I don't exactly remember. I know a 5881 is 0.9, and a el34 is like 1.5. The 6v6s are much lower, so I can run both in parallel without as much stress on the amp and still get the tone I really like. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do next is we're going to run in through the front of the amp and put it into the JCM 800 mode and rock that out a little bit. Hear how she sounds. I think it sounds pretty great. So let's see, put that over there. Yeah, there we go. Start with the gain at half. treble a little bit. Again, definitely. Ugh. I gotta get that fixed. I don't know what that is. Probably a cap or something going, or some interference I'm getting. I still think it has something to do with this socket here. Anyway, what I was gonna say is that the very stereotypical JCM 800 sound. I think it sounds really close. Let's max the gain out, and because we got, you know, those two plate resistors at higher values, I think we get more of a Fradman brown eye. Actually, if we're going to go for the brown eye, I'm going to go ahead and flip the cap to 0.47 microfarads over the third stage there to tighten it up a little bit. It had no cap over it a second ago, but now it has that cap. Let's see what it sounds And just for the fun of it, let's do the number 34 mode here. Crank these guys to where they need to be. Okay, let's see what else can we do with this guy. Let's go into Mod 5. Play around with the Mod 5 mode a little bit. Of course, we need some delay for this one, a little bit more reverb. Forgot that one. sound. I think I'm close to... I say this in every video. I think I'm close to the final design for this thing, but I just keep tweaking it. But it's getting very, very close to where I'm 100% happy now. I'm just glad I figured out what was up with the low volume in the tube issue there. Sounds fantastic at low volumes now, even better than it did before, especially with the other tubes in. So, again, I'll keep y'all updated if I do anything else with this. Who knows what'll happen next? Next, I think I'm just going to put some very high value capacitors over the power tube cathode, just to make it a little bit stiffer in the power supply, more like a fixed bias amp. But you know what? I think I've gotten almost as close as possible as I can to make this thing sound like a push-pull in its how it sits currently. 2 6V6s together.